If you're watching this, I'm in jail.
Wayne has just been convicted of 1 felony and 2 misdemeanors, simply for trying to help the criminally abused animals at Sunrise Egg Farm and Reichardt Duck Farm.
What has happened that has led to this point? How is this animal rights activist facing a long-ass time in jail?
New at 6, we first reported on this Bay Area group that proudly touts its tactics to raid farms. Today, the activists were trying to free birds from an egg farm in Petaluma, but their protest landed many of the human participants in lockup instead.
It's a facility that we had investigated previously and found animals with tumors on their heads.
Rotting dead birds on the floor of these cages.
Animals with their internal organs being ripped inside out.
Chickens with infected eyes. It's heartbreaking and just horrible neglect.
We reported it to the authorities repeatedly.
Sonoma County law enforcement, they failed to act. They didn't do anything to help the animals at this facility.
We decided we had to do something ourselves.
On May 29th, 2018, Wayne, myself, and other animal rescuers went to Sunrise Farms, to their largest factory farm, and we decided to take action into our own hands.
Wayne Hsiung, an investigator with the Open Rescue Network. California Penal Code Section 597 is attached in this letter. You can read the statute yourself.
I'm sorry, I'm not.
So thank you very much, sir.
Guys, you're not allowed to do this.
You have the right to do this. Thank you
You
very
have
much.
the right to do this.
We do have the right under 5.
Guys, please.
Okay, you have a right under this power.
You don't have a right of anything.
Do you want to read the statute?
You do not have a right.
Well, he took pictures that
I don't give a shit what you talk.
You need.
No, sir, you cannot do that. That is the tunnel. Nobody. You cannot do that.
Okay, folks, we are inside. I was able to duck under someone. Someone show me what's happening.
Myself and other rescuers, we were able to rescue 37 hens from the facility that day and get them veterinary care. I walked right past the police with a hen in my arm, with my team behind me with hens in their arms, and they didn't try to stop us.
Earlier today, a wall of protesters walked out of CalEgg's farm in Petaluma carrying chickens they believe are being mistreated.
And they're called to stop us, right? But what do they do when they see us? And we've got like grandmothers and little kids with us. It's not just, radical vegan activists, people with tattoos and balaclavas and hoodies. It's, we got little kids like Vegan Evan. He was a 7-year-old kid. He looks like an innocent, sweet 7-year-old kid because that's what he was. We've got grandmothers, who have never done anything illegal in their lives, walking with us onto this factory farm. And when this cop sees these kind of beautiful, decent, diverse human beings, and then he sees also these destitute animals.
What do you have going on right now?
She was found in there by rescuers, and I'm just holding on to her right now.
Is she dead?
Yes.
What does he do? He walks out with us. And he basically consents to us removing the animals, because it's very hard for someone to see that and see people not just pointing out the cruelty, but saying, like, I'm going to give them help, and I have the power to do that. I can do that physically with my hands, and decide to stop that. When we see these animals dying, we see people trying to aid them in their suffering. Are we going to stop them?
Is this one okay? Is there anything wrong with this one?
Nobody in there is okay.
They initially had kind of even told Wayne that they were open to going onto the property and seeing the conditions that Wayne was describing and maybe helping the animals and getting animal control there.
We're going to check on animal control's ETA.
Okay.
Appreciate everybody's cooperation. So far, so good. And we'll take a look here in a little bit.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
After having that conversation with Wayne, they basically took it back, refused to do that, and said that people couldn't go back on the property to help more animals.
So, will the folks who are planning to do civil disobedience please approach the front?
People who are still there said, okay, well, we're going to try to go back anyways. That's our rights, and these animals need help. They need help right now. And they tried to cross the police line and go back to help more animals and were arrested.
Deputy's line, you will be arrested.
The Sonoma County Sheriff did everything in its power to prevent these arrests from happening. It's about as peaceful as a mass arrest can get. 40 activists from Direct Action Everywhere, an animal rights organization, held flowers and sang songs as they volunteered to be placed in handcuffs and charged with misdemeanor trespassing.
We tried everything in our power to negotiate with them to avoid arrest. However, there was about 40 people that were determined to advance their cause by voluntarily getting arrested today.
Calling the cops, we literally called the cops before we did. We said, come with us and join us. That is a sign of our power, of our confidence in our own vision.
You called the police before you went in, and this is something that you guys are pretty much known for, I suppose, at this point. Not running away from the police and not doing these things at night. Why is that exactly?
The logic is essentially that we believe 100% that what we are doing is right, it is moral, and it is legal, and we are not ashamed, we are not afraid.
We're trying to normalize our actions and normalize animal rescue and animal rights. We cannot hide under cover of darkness. We have to do it in daylight. Why should I hide what I'm doing when I know what I'm doing is right and legal and what they're doing is wrong and criminal? We don't just show people the suffering, we show people the solution concretely with our own hands, our own bodies.
This is clearly about just trying to lock someone up who they see as a threat to animal agriculture, because one of the things he was convicted of was trespass at Reichardt Duck Farm, which was another action that took place a year later, a year after the Sunrise action. And Wayne actually didn't even do that one.
The Sonoma County Sheriff's Department reports they arrested 98 animal rights activists and brought them here to the jail.
More than 600 activists with Direct Action Everywhere stormed the slaughterhouse Monday, fanning out in teams to chain themselves together at the entrance, freeing dozens of ducks and in some cases locking themselves by the neck.
Reichardt Duck Farm is one of the largest factory farms in the state of California. We slaughter 1 million animals every year, and there have been repeated reports of animal cruelty from undercover whistleblowers. The smell emanating from this facility is so awful that it's hard to breathe when you're standing outside. There have been so many complaints, including complaints supported by licensed veterinarians, former prosecutors. Indicating there's criminal violations happening at this farm and other factory farms across the state of California. The government has failed to take any action at all. Ordinary citizens have started taking action when the government has been asleep at the wheel.
Despite numerous complaints, authorities have yet to investigate the Petaluma factory and slaughterhouse. Activists, however, have been repeatedly arrested, with many facing multiple felony charges and, if convicted, decades in prison.
Our culture does involve eating a lot of animals, and that's the way things have been for a long time. But so many things that we couldn't imagine that weren't possible 20 years ago, they happen, and they happen faster than we could have imagined.
Wayne actually didn't even do that one, and yet he's being locked up for it because they perceived him as a leader and as somebody powerful in the animal rights movement.
DXE is well known for its audacious protests in recent years, taking animals off premises in what they call rescues. The owners don't see it that way.
I'm not opposed to anybody being vegan. That's their right. But what's not their right is to steal.
As a symbol, they'll take a dying animal who was going to die before it makes its way to the slaughterhouse anyway, and therefore has no commercial value. And they rescue them, they bring them to a veterinarian, they care for them, they bring them to a shelter so that they can live lives. They don't ever take anything of commercial value. What their real crime is that they're shining a light on what these extremely powerful and profitable corporations are doing. And that's why these corporations, which control the government and control law enforcement, are prosecuting them.
The farm has much more influence than we do. It's a huge corporation that supplies to even huger corporations, including the largest corporations in the world, like Amazon and Costco.
These were chickens that were being bred for Amazon and Whole Foods. The total false advertising of these companies in terms of you're reading about cage-free hens, that the reality is quite different. So it's not only the barbarism of the way the animals are being treated, but the complete fraud in the advertising of these companies.
It is absolutely corporate deceit and corporate fraud. And the problem is that both at the federal level and at the state level, the government is purposely abdicating its role in enforcing the law, leaving activists with no choice but to do it themselves because nobody else is doing it.
Even though there are some laws in the United States, and I imagine in the United Kingdom too, to enforce protections for animals in the context of factory farming, it's really hard to get anyone to do anything. There's this inertia, everything just stays static.
2 animal activists are being prosecuted after taking several ducks and chickens from 2 farms in Petaluma.
This trial has been absurd and unfair and so clearly biased from the start.
They're punishing them in response to the journalism that they're doing to chill and deter people from shining a light on what it is that really goes on inside of American industrial farms and the horrific torture and suffering that animals endure in our name.
The corporation and this system is a bad system. The government, this CEO who's making billions of dollars off of torturing animals, this is a bad institution, a bad system that is tricking you into buying product A rather than product B.
I mean, this entire trial started with Wayne being given a gag order, an unconstitutional gag order, being told that he cannot talk about this case to the press. Before the jury came in, the judge made a lot of rulings about what would and would not be allowed to be shown or said to the jury. Unfortunately, almost 100% of the time, she sided with the prosecution. And it's so clear how factory farms have just corrupted everything that happened in these court proceedings.
In 2022 alone, the ag industry spent $168 million on lobbying, and at least that much money on direct campaign contributions. And the direct campaign contributions are very hard to track because in the US system, there's a lot of what's called dark money. When you have literally hundreds of millions of dollars going into these campaign accounts, people are making the decisions that have been captured by the industry. 99%
of the animal cruelty evidence that we had obtained was not going to be allowed to be shown to the jury. The judge, Laura Pasaglia, is a former prosecutor with the Sonoma County District Attorney's Office. She has worked with the lead prosecutor in this case for many years. It was so clear that the prosecutor did not want to make this about animals because he knew that the jury would be sympathetic if this was about animals. I was not allowed to use, and other witnesses were not allowed to use any colorful language. I wasn't allowed to say that anything was sad or horrible or cruel. I had to be as plain as possible in my speech or she would declare a mistrial. She literally said if Wayne or any of the witnesses used the words necessity or necessary in front of the jury, she would declare a mistrial. So we were not even allowed to use those words. Veterinarian Dr. Armighty May was barred from testifying in front of the jury. She was a veterinarian who'd been brought onto the Reichardt Duck Farm property back in 2014 when Mercy for Animals had conducted an investigation and exposed them for criminal animal cruelty all the way back in 2014. They did not allow her to testify and to speak about the things she witnessed. They also would not allow us to talk about any of our disease findings. I conducted disease testing at Reichardt Duck Farm where we exposed that a disease called Remourella natapestifer was rampant at the facility. From the beginning of this trial, what's so disturbing is knowing that if the jury had had all the facts, we might have had a completely different outcome.
The farmers are in there testifying, right? What kind of things have they been saying?
One of the owners of Sunrise Farms, his name is Mike Weber.
Maggie? Hi, Mike. How are you?
Good. Mike Weber.
Thanks for having me on here.
You bet.
He testified in this court case.
Really, why me? What was so bad with our operation that we were the targets?
He said that there were no sick or injured chickens on the property that day.
It's a big operation, but we're small farmers.
Do you consider your farm humane? Should there be a concern about how your birds are raised?
All farmers should be held accountable. They should be doing everything they can to provide humane care. For the amount of effort we put in to take care of these animals, that's the way it should be done.
He tried to argue that we were hurting the chickens by holding them improperly and saying you should hold them by the feet. But you know how, they hold chickens upside down by their feet. No, you should never hurt hold a bird that way, I can tell you that can, seriously injure them. So I think he's the one holding chickens incorrectly, not us.
How many chickens are on that farm?
I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I think it's a few 100,000.
Let's say minimum 50,000, just to be charitable, right? 10,000, right? Out of 10,000 chickens on a farm, all crammed together, his claim was on the day you were there, 10,000 chickens had no disease, no injury, and there was no cannibalism. 10,000. That's being charitable to the size of the farm. But it was more like 100,000, and he's making that claim boldly on the stand and lying through his teeth. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, animals are just like humans. If you have a city with 100,000 people in it, some people die every day. It's part of the natural process.
I was in the courtroom when they read the verdict. Wayne was immediately placed into handcuffs. A few minutes later, he was walked through the hallway of the courthouse and taken immediately to jail as if he's some threat to the public, some dangerous criminal who's going to hurt somebody or run away.
The idea that he would run away or be a threat to anyone else is hilarious, considering that he phoned the police before the first action that he's now being on trial for.
Wayne has always, in all of these actions, tried to work with law enforcement because we want them to address the criminal animal cruelty. We don't want to be doing this ourselves. It's because of their failure to act that Wayne felt forced to act himself, and now they're putting him in prison for it. There were, in the courtrooms around us, actual murder cases happening, yet, a deputy district attorney was focused on putting someone in jail just for helping animals. It's just so absurd, the world that we live in. We are hopeful that because of the absurdity of many of the judge's rulings, we can get this before an appellate court. Case law could solidify the right to rescue, and then that could be used in future cases or to even prevent future cases from happening, because it would just be recognized that yes, you do have the right to go onto a property to help criminally abused animals. Of course you do.
How do you think these people can sleep at night knowing that they have designed a trial to specifically try to defend farmers who have been proven to be abusing their animals by either neglect or, in this case, neglect, pretty much, right? So it's proven, it's there. How do you sleep at night as somebody who is trying to make sure that doesn't get brought up in trials so you can win?
I don't know. It's something I've been thinking about a lot. I just don't understand where these prosecutors are coming from and how they think that what they're doing is right.
Yes, there are a lot of incredibly powerful forces, an enormous amount of money coming after us. But despite all that, we have to recognize that we can win.
I think, now that we're seeing somebody go to prison or to jail for rescuing animals, this is really a make or break moment. We can either look at this situation and we can cower in fear, we can be afraid and stop and give up, or we can rise and we can come back even stronger, and we can be inspired by Wayne's sacrifice for these animals, and we can say, you know what? We're not going to stop rescuing animals.
We just have to have the confidence to believe that our moral intuitions are actually right. And other people will see the same. They will see an animal who's suffering and say, yeah, we should be rescuing them. Why should we torture animals? Let's rescue them instead.
Despite today's arrests, DXE says it will continue its protests.
Over the last couple of months, while this prosecution has been taking place, myself and other investigators went back to Sunrise Farms and to Reichardt Duck Farm, and we continued exposing this criminal animal cruelty and rescuing the animals. While the government has been busy prosecuting animal rescue, we've been busy saving lives. They thought we'd be scared and that we would stop rescuing animals. But they were wrong. Over the last 2 months, while they've been busy in court, we have gone back to Sunrise and Reichardt, and we have documented more criminal animal cruelty, and we have saved several more lives, including Elsie and River. Elsie had been blinded in one eye, making her especially vulnerable on this crowded factory farm. Animal rescuer Conrad De Jesus carried her out of there to get veterinary care. She was in excruciating pain and had to have her eye surgically removed. But today, Elsie is thriving at an animal sanctuary. Next, I went back to Reichardt, where I witnessed diseased ducks on their backs, neglected and dying, unable to access food or water. Among those ducks was River. He was crying out for help, and his back and wings were covered in blood. I carried him out of there and rushed him to the vet. where he was tube fed, given medications, and hospitalized for 5 days. Miraculously, he gained back his strength, and today he is safe, happy, and free. These trials are not about us. They are about animals like Elsie and River. And until they get justice, we will not stop.
Let's just imagine now there is someone who's watched this. Let's imagine they've got through to the end and they've seen everything and heard everything. And they still believe that Wayne is a criminal, you're a criminal, these animals are bred for this exact purpose, they are property. I don't understand why people do this. I don't understand why you do this. You are breaking the law and you should go to jail, which I imagine the comment section will have a substantial amount of these people. What would you say to them in an attempt to convince them that they're wrong?
Well, I mean, I think that we see corporations so differently in our society. We see them in this moral light in a strange way, I think. If we were rescuing animals who are being criminally abused by a random individual, a lot of people would see this very differently. If somebody was just starving their dog or even their chicken to death in their backyard and I went and I rescued them, would you see this differently? Would you then see me and Wayne as heroes or whatever for rescuing animals who are just being abused by an individual? Is your perception based on the fact that these animals are being raised for food, being raised by these companies, and is that going to change your perception? We all need to find courage in our hearts in these moments to keep going and to keep pushing forward. That's what Wayne wants. That's what the animals need. Please don't give up. Let's all come together and support one another in these difficult times and come back stronger. Rescue animals if you can. If you're in the United States, please come to Wayne's sentencing hearing. That'll be on November 30th. You can go to dxe.io/sentencing for information. We really want to mobilize people to be there to support Wayne and to support the animals and to keep asking Sonoma County law enforcement to do something to help these animals. Call or email the Sonoma County District Attorney's Office and ask them to stop prosecuting animal rescue and to prosecute these companies for criminal animal cruelty instead. And people can get information on how to do that at dxe.io/Sonoma.
If you're watching this, I'm in jail. No matter what happens to me, it is more important than ever that you take action for animals, because we cannot allow the industry to think they've won.